poppin' YouTube? It's your girl Misha and welcome back to my channel. If you are a return subscriber, what's up? And don't forget to check out your girl new website at www.touchstyles.co. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a lace frontal handmade wig. I already went ahead and sewed down the frontal part though, so I will not be showing that today on the camera. I'll only be showing how to construct your track. But it's important that you sew your frontal at the top at least 1 to 1.5 inches in front of your cap. Go ahead and string your string, and you're going to place your first track at the bottom. There's a thick band that's down here. This is where I place my first track. A lot of people will tell you not to sew your very first track on this band because it won't stretch anymore. That is not true. You can sew on this band, you just don't want to go through the band. So you need to literally only pinch your needle through the black material. Don't go through the band, but just like the black cap itself. The band is like a thick, stretchy, rubber band feeling type of thing. You'll know exactly what the elastic band is. Alright, so now you're going to continue to sew straight across. It's very important that you keep your stitches just like the rest of your stitches. I probably should have said that better. You want to make sure that each stitch look exactly the same because it's all about quality. It's not about how big your spaces are or how small, but like how consistent you are. So you're just going to come all the way down on that elastic band until you can't anymore. And then we're going to actually do the flipped over methods throughout this process because I don't like to cut my tracks because it causes more shedding. So the flip over method, you're going to sew until you can't anymore. And once it's time to flip over your track, you're literally just going to flip it over the opposite way because we're going to head back the other way. And you're going to start your knot literally right on the beginning where you flipped over that track. So like right here where my thumb is, that is where I'm going to create my knot because you're trying to flatten that out as much as possible. So you're still going to stitch and stuff the same, but you're going to flip that over. And when you tie your knot, you have to make sure that your knot is sitting right there where that flip over first starts, just to flatten out that area. It's simple, it's harder, it sounds harder than what it actually is, but it's really not hard. You literally just have to go back the opposite way and you have to knock out that bump that's right there in the beginning of that flip over to keep your tracks nice and flat. And honestly, with curly hair, your tracks will come out flat looking anyways because the hair is so curly, you know, it's so thick you can't really see how flat it is. But you're just going to continue to stitch the opposite way. If you're still on your band when you come around, do not stitch through the elastic band, just stitch on the black material itself. But if you're not, don't worry about it. And just keep your stitches nice and consistent. But honestly, if it's hard for you to keep your stitches consistent, it's not a big deal. It's just like a better look to have it clean looking. But honestly, you're still gonna get the same results as long as your stitches are secure. And honestly, to be real, keeping up with your stitches, like trying to keep them all the same size, and honestly slows down time. Like it takes way longer. So it's up to you, but I'm just going to teach you the right way. But it's not mandatory. But if you're selling wigs and making money off of it, it's just a pretty thing to do. All right, so now it's time to flip over. You're going to flip over your track, and then you're going to go ahead and start threading where you just flipped over. But you want to make sure that your knot is literally right where that track is flipping over. So like right where that track starts to go the opposite way, you need to put your knot right there. Do you see that lump that's right there in that where my needle is, that little lump that's right there on that track? That is what I'm talking about knocking out. So when you tie your knot and you squeeze your knot, boom, it'll flatten out just like that. And then you're just gonna work your way back to the left and continue to stitch pretty if you want to. It's not a big deal, but making wigs, when you're doing your tracks, you're literally just going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Your back tracks, like your first 2 to 3 tracks will kind of be straight across. And then the rest of them, as we go back and forth, they'll kind of curve like a slight U shape. Not even a U because that's too curved. But let's say like, you know how basketball look, like the curve on the basketball. That's kind of how your tracks will go back and forth curved, but just not as hard as a curve, just like a slight curve. But you guys will start to see, like, once we get up more and more and more, you guys will start to see what I'm talking about. I'm just literally just sewing back and forth, back and forth. I'm keeping my stitches pretty. Whenever you tie your knot and when you have to cut your string, you want to make sure that you tie that knot about 3 to 4 times. because it just makes sure your track is secure and to make sure that your track does not come down. All right, so we're about to have to flip over again. You don't flip over until you meet the end of that cap. So right where you see my cap end, I'm gonna sew my last stitch right there. And I'm not gonna flip over until I'm all the way at the end of that cap and I can't sew down anymore. Like this, like you should be right there. You should not flip your track until you meet the end of your cap, because it won't be pretty. Make sure you come all the way to the end, but make sure you don't come too far down. Like, don't be overbearing and come too far down to where when you flip over the track, it's like all the way off the wig. Like, no. Go ahead and flip over the track and you're gonna knock out that knot. Like always knock out that knot when you flip over your track. When you're sewing next to your frontal, you wanna get as close as you can to your frontal without actually touching your frontal. Because once it's time to fix your wig up and replace the frontal, if you're sewing your bundles onto your frontal, you know, that's gonna be hard trying to swap out your frontals. You're gonna have to make a whole new wig. So when you do your flip over method and you're next to your frontal, do not touch the frontal. You just want to get as close as possible so that there's not a gap between your track and your frontal, but you don't want to touch your frontal, if that makes sense. So yeah, like I said, whenever you're doing your flip over methods or whenever you're meeting your track with your frontal, do not merge the two together. Do not combine the two stitches together. They need to be separate so that when you need to do maintenance on your laces and swap them out, you can easily swap out your frontal pieces without having to take down any tracks or making a whole new wig. All right, so for the next few minutes, I'm just gonna be stitching right along. So I'll stop talking, but once I get close to the frontal, I'm gonna pick it back up, just to remind you guys to not to connect your track with your frontal, and also to knock out that knot when you do your flip over method. But this process is really just repetitive. Like once, I feel like the outside corners are the important parts, but like the middle is literally just stitching along. If y'all would like a detailed video on how to string y'all string and how to tie knots and stuff, just comment down below, let me know, and I can deliver. So now I'm starting to get close to the frontal. Just remember, do not connect the two. Keep them separate. So when you put the track close to the frontal, just get as close as you can without touching. Now it's time to flip over. Do not connect this track with the frontal. You just want to get as close as possible without touching it. The reason that we flip over is to avoid potential shedding, because the more that you cut your tracks up, it causes the hair to shed, because they do put the tracks together and all that. So if you're just cutting through the wefts and tearing them apart, of course your hair is going to shed because you're destroying the structure of the bundle. And you're gonna see me stitch this specific area down a whole bunch, just because I want to make sure it's super flat, just because this is the area that's like right behind the ear, and I just wanted to make sure that it was super flat. So I'm almost finished with my first bundle. We're halfway there. I'm still doing my flip over method, and you're gonna see me add in my second bundle because I'm finished with this bundle. This is a little or intermediate, you're going to see me add in a track connected to a string that's already started from my last bundle. So I just went ahead and put that track right through my string and connect it to my other one. And now I'm just going to secure this bundle in just so it can stop following, and then so I can go ahead and get started with stitching. Whenever you're adding in a bundle, when you start your bundle, you want to make sure you tie it about 3 to 5 times just to make sure it lasts. Just make sure you stay consistent with your stitches, and now you're going to continue to sew in your second bundle just how you did your first one. You may notice that the tracks are going to curve a little bit more. It's just because we're getting closer up to the top of the head, but it's the same process. Now my string is too short to keep going, so I'm just cutting it and tying it in about 3 to 4 knots so I can go ahead and start a new string. Whenever you start a new string, you want to secure that knot about 3 to 4 times just to make sure it's secure, because you are starting off a new string, so that first stitch is like that protector for the entire string. If one string unravels, they all unravel. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put my track about this close to my frontal before I flip it over, but I'm always going to leave a little bit of space between the frontal and the track. And once you're at the top, it's very important that you, when you flip over, it's very important to knock out all of those humps and knots, because you're at the top, and if anything is bulky, just make sure it's not bulky at the top. Like, the top is the most important part, because you want your top to be as flat as possible for the most natural look. You definitely don't want it to look like a wig. Now I won't do as much talking because it's just repetitive information. So you're going to see me just going back and forth, and I'll pick back up once I feel like there's a new step being added. I want to show you guys how close I'm putting the track to the frontal, but not actually touching it. Because you do want to have it as close as possible so that you don't have any lumps or bumps or gaps in your wig. but you don't want to put it on top of there. And when you flip over, you want to knock out that knot real good so that it can be as flat as possible. Now you're going to see how flat my track is, and that's what you want to go for, especially at the top. So I went ahead and sped up the video and cut a lot of stuff out because it's just very repetitive. But I'm still on my second bundle, and I'm actually about to flip over this piece right here as soon as I get done stitching it down. I just wanted to give y'all a close-up of how close you should be sewing your tracks right before you flip over. You want it close enough to where it's not touching the frontal, but you don't want a big old gap there. You want it to be seamless. So I'm finishing up my second bundle now, and I'm about to add in my last bundle. And I am still going back and forth, but now the wefts are way shorter because we're at the top. You want to make sure you secure the stitch about 3 to 4 times before proceeding on, just to make sure that track is secure in place. And I sped up the video again, but I'm just continuing to sew. This is a close-up of me showing the flip over method once again, just because I know it takes time to get used to this. This is not something that you're going to get on the first try, but if you're a natural, it is possible that you can get it on the first try. But definitely don't give up. Just make sure that those corners are very flat, and then just continue to go side to side. Now that I'm getting to the top, my curve is going to slowly start to fall out. Fall out meaning that your curves are going to straighten out now, so your tracks won't look so curved. So you should still be going side to side just how you were in the back. You see that we still have the same exact shape that we had in the back. It's just starting to change because it's way smaller. But we're still doing the same thing. I hope everyone is still up with me. I hope no one got confused. I hope I did a great job explaining everything. I know I chopped the video up a little bit, but honestly, if I cut anything off, it was because I was just simply going back and forth, back and forth. We're getting one step closer to being finished. You should still be flipping over your tracks, and you should still be making sure you're stitching down that track as close as possible, but without touching that frontal. And you're going to see me right here. I'm still going to take out my hump, take out that bump right at the flip, because I want my wig to be as flat as possible. If you are someone that's going to be nervous about the flip over method, even though it's going to be totally fine, if you feel more comfortable now that you're up here, you can go ahead and start cutting your tracks instead of flipping over. When you get done, you would just cut it and start a new stitch if you want the flattest look possible. But as long as you're following along right and you're doing exactly what I say, your flipped over method will look just as perfect as if you went through and cut the entire wig up. I feel like the camera is angled so perfect right now, so you guys can literally see the flip over method up close and personal, which is so bomb. When you flip it over, you just want to make sure, once again, I know y'all probably tired of hearing this, but I don't care, because that's how important it is for a perfect wig. Like, it's so important. I'm gonna be on y'all like white on rice about this. So y'all need to make sure when you flip over your track that you tie that knot right there in that flip, so you can flatten out that wig. So when I start my online academy, just know this is gonna be a big thing. And you're just gonna continue to keep sewing along. We're almost finished. I'm probably only gonna flip over about 2 to 3 more times, because as you can see, we're almost done. And now that we're so close to being done, you will notice that when you sew down these last few tracks, it'll seem like the track is trying to get super close to the frontal, just like this, how it looks like I can only fit about one more track right there. So to avoid your tracks getting too close, you want to pull down on your track as you're stitching it down. So as you're making those knots, you should be pulling downwards on that track that you're on, just so that when you sew it into place, it doesn't scoot back up into the frontal. Okay, so this will be my last track. I'm just going to flip over one more time, but if this was not curly hair, I would have made this into 2 tracks, but since it's curly hair, it's easier to fill in gaps, and you don't need as much hair with curly hair. So I'm going to flip over just one last time. And you just want to make sure that you're pulling down on this track as you're sewing it down, just so it don't, you see how it like keeps getting super close to the frontal. That's why I said that you guys need to pull down on the track as you're sewing it in when you get to the top, just to avoid this. Also, if you do not want to flip over your last track, you can go ahead and cut your track here, and then you can sew in your track without doing the flip over method. But I'm a little more advanced, so I'm going to go ahead and just flip it over because it's easy for me. But if you feel like if you try to flip over this track and if you feel like it's going to be bulky, then don't do it. Just go ahead and cut it and then just sew it in. However, if you do exactly what I say, you will not have to worry about any bulks. Your very last track is the most important. This is like the topper of your whole install. So you want to make sure this is very flat. You want to take your time with this. Go ahead and knock out those bulks at the corners where you flipped over, and then take your time with this stitch. Do not connect this track with the frontal. You want to have it as close as possible to the frontal, but you do not want to attach it to the frontal, because when it's time to fix your wig up, it'll be very hard for you to fix it up without destroying the whole wig. So you just want your track as close as possible to the frontal without touching it. Like, you should still see a little bit of the cap in between the cap and the track after you sew it down. But you do want the track close enough to where you cannot tell by the bare eye or a quick glimpse that the tracks are not connected. But do not connect them. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut off as much weft as I need to complete this wig, because I can't see what I'm doing with the rest of that hair hanging over there, since it's just a little bitty space that I'm working with. But now I'm just going to go ahead and sew down the rest of this track, and you're going to make sure the very last stitch is very secure. You're going to stitch that about 3 to 4 times, because this is finishing your wig. So you want to make sure like you're just really securing everything that you just did, because you don't want it to unravel. Alright, now you're going to finish off and tie that knot about 3 to 5 times. And the only thing you have to do now is cut off all of the excess cap that's right underneath the frontal. Only cut the cap that's right underneath the net. You do not need that. This is how my wig looked before customization. I had not cut the baby hairs yet. or plucked anything, and as you can see, I still have my cap underneath. And then this is my finished result. This is with the knots bleached and plucked and styled by me, Touch Styles. Thank you so much for tuning into my video. I hope you guys enjoy, and give me a thumbs up if you actually learned something. Comment down below if you guys had anything that stood out and really helped you, and comment down below if you guys have any questions. Next, you guys are going to see how the wig turned out on my client. I did install this wig with glue, and I sewed it down in the back.